Morning, everyone. So I thought the theme today would be Boris Johnson, because there's an awful lot of rewriting history being done by his allies, talking about him being ousted. He's, now trying to say over the peerages. It's actually quite funny, isn't it? The Boris Johnson who claims that he delivered Brexit, and removing him is an attack on Brexit. It's a way to try and reverse Brexit. And you think, so what was Brexit about then? It was stopping all those unelected bureaucrats in Brussels telling us what to do. All right. And what's all the latest political row about? It's about me not being able to put my friends into a position where they'd be unelected bureaucrats telling everyone what to do. So, but he's Rishi Sunak has presented a version of events. Boris Johnson has basically said that's rubbish. That's what he said. And I want to start off with a really great quote. So David Alan Green, if people who don't know him, he's a legal constitutional expert who has been incredibly useful at explaining when our constitution has been going badly wrong, as it has in the past few years, why it is. And he has put together two quotes. One, and both of them are about Tories calling each other liars. So, well, I'd say Tories, not quite, I suppose, in the first case. So this is from 1878. Benjamin Disraeli trying to accuse William Gladstone of being dishonest. And this is what he said. He described him as a sophistical rhetorician, inebriated with the exuberance of his own verbosity and gifted with an egotistical imagination. That was how Disraeli said that Gladstone was lying in 1878. Boris Johnson of Rishi Sunak 2023, you're talking rubbish, you. That is the level of sophistication of Boris Johnson compared to his more illustrious predecessors. But I will just say about Rishi Sunak, given that he came out yesterday and completely set about Boris Johnson, I was saying all weekend, where is he? Where is he? Why is he hiding? He's going to have to answer these questions anyway. All he's doing is giving Boris Johnson a few days head start on the narrative. Remember, Boris Johnson resigned when he did so that he could get his story out before we saw the Privileges Committee report. Rishi Sunak, and the Privileges Committee can't do anything about that, so he can do that. Rishi Sunak could have stopped Boris Johnson getting his own version out. He could have occupied the vacuum, and he chose not to. And given that he was willing to come out and basically say Boris Johnson's corrupt, because that's what he said. He said Boris Johnson tried to get him to do something that Rishi Sunak didn't think was right. So he's accused Boris Johnson of corruption. But there we go. The other thing to make note of, we should make note, really, shouldn't we? The Mail, the Daily Mail. There's actually two front pages we should make note of. The first is the Daily Mail. There's the thing about them trying to blame Keir Starmer for the mess the country's in. That's fine. But there's the Nadine Dorries, the sinister forces that stop me, a girl born into poverty in Liverpool, from reaching the Lords. And basically, what she's whining about is she was given assurances that she would go to the House of Lords, and she's not going to the House of Lords. And who gave her those assurances? Boris Johnson, the most famous liar in the country. She's not coming across very well here, is she? But the Daily Express is an absolute beauty. Huge letters. Boris, believe me, I shall return to frontline politics. No, he won't. No, he won't, because this is what I want to go over. Boris Johnson's supporters are talking about how he was ousted. He wasn't ousted, he quit. He quit last week. He quit last October. He quit last July. All these people trying to say he's a winner. He's a serial winner. No, he's not. He quit last July. Remember what happened last July? He quit last July because he couldn't find enough MPs. Tory MPs, when he had a large majority, he couldn't find enough MPs to run a government. They wouldn't work for his government. Then in October, he quit again. Leadership contest. Liz Truss, the lettuce was standing triumphant, if a lettuce can stand. over the fallen political corpse of Liz Truss. There was to be a leadership contest again. Boris Johnson, unbelievably, but it's true, had the nominations to enter that contest. If he'd have gone to a head-to-head with Rishi Sunak to the members, people believe, we can't know for certain, but people believe Boris Johnson would have won. He would have been Prime Minister again. But he pulled out. He quit again. Why did he quit? Because he was told by his advisors that if he became Prime Minister but made a balls up of it, it would hurt his earning potential on the speech circuit in America. So he thought to himself, well, I don't want to hurt my earning potential on the speech circuit, do I? So he backed out. He backed out for money, basically, because he couldn't be confident he wouldn't make, because it wouldn't hurt his earnings potential if he came back to government and you know, produced wonders and won another election. That would actually enhance his earning potential. The reason he backed out is because he had no confidence that he wouldn't make a balls up of government. Then he quit again last week. And again, ask yourself, why did he quit again last week? He wasn't ousted. The Privileges Committee, yes, were going to recommend a hefty suspension. Right. That's not a Labour-led committee, by the way, like he says. It's a Conservative-led committee. 4 of the 7 members are Conservatives. 2 of them, very strong advocates for Boris Johnson in the past. Then that wouldn't have done anything to him, because then the House of Commons had to support it. If the House of Commons had decided, well, we don't think that punishment's appropriate, they could vote to either just strike it down or change the punishment to whatever they like. Parliament could do whatever it likes. Parliament is sovereign. Parliament, House of Commons, clear majority of Tory MPs again. But he wasn't confident of having Tory MPs on his side. But even that would have launched a recall petition. It would have suspended him from Parliament, but he suspended himself from Parliament anyway. He's only turned up about 4 or 5 times since September. So then he could have, it's his electorate who decide, okay, he's recalled, that only takes 10%, fair enough. Pure Labour voters could do that. But then there's a by-election, and it's a Conservative constituency. It's not just that he's won it. He's won it for the last few elections with over 50% of the vote. So over 50% of the people who vote in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, I'm getting used to that pronunciation now, are Conservative voters. So there is no element of being ousted here. The reason he quit last week is because he didn't fancy facing the electorate. Maybe his ego couldn't take a Tory-dominated committee telling him he was a liar and a Tory-dominated House of Commons saying that he should, you know, go and cool off for a few weeks. So, yes, his ego, I'm sure, couldn't take that. And bear in mind, Boris Johnson would have to have been in the chamber when that vote took place, because he has to defend himself. When he says he has no recourse, he has no right to appeal and stuff like that, that is a lie. He does have a right to appeal, because when Parliament votes to either approve or disapprove of the Privileges Committee recommendation, because that's all it's a recommendation, Boris Johnson is allowed to make his case. He's allowed to appeal directly to the House of Commons. He can stand up in the full public glare and make his case. He's chosen not to do that. He's run away. Absolutely run away. You know, and so, because he's not a winner. He's not a winner. He's a serial quitter. You know, it's, oh, with this large majority. Yeah, against what? Against what? And also, it wasn't him that won it. It was Isaac Levidow, the same person who masterminded it. Boris Johnson, when he was standing to be mayor of London, he was failing. His campaign was failing. Ken Livingstone was winning every day of the week. And then he brought in Isaac Levidow, who completely changed the way he was going about his campaign. Livingstone didn't adapt, and Boris Johnson won, and the rest is history, so to speak. But Isaac Levidow's the one who's won for him, not him. You know, like whenever desperate Brexit supporters tell me, oh, give it up, you lost, give it up. It's like, no, that's loser. Quitting is loser talk. Winners don't quit. They can lose, but for a winner, losing is a setback. You know, you learn, you get up, you go again. That's what a winner does. They just keep getting up. There's a saying, in judo, I can't remember the Japanese anymore. I'll do the English version. Makes more sense anyway. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. You know, that's what I had as one of the 2 judo sayings from Dr. Jigoro Kano when I learnt judo when I was younger. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. That's what winners do. That's not what Johnson's done. He quits at the first hint of difficulty every single time. He quit last July. He quit last October. He quit again last week. And you think to yourself, so why have we suddenly got all this quitting? Why doesn't he have a lifetime of quitting? Because he's had a lifetime of having it easy. He's had a lifetime of privilege and wealth, being able to surround himself with people who'll tell him he's great all day long. He's only just recently been forced to listen to people telling him he's a dickhead. But anyway, read a few comments before we go on. Aidan, to the Disraeli quote there. Are you insinuating that I am tolerating such diabolical nonsense from an unsophisticated individual who's intoxicated by the exuberance of his own vivacity? Is the exact quote. Was it? Okay. Nonetheless, rather more sophisticated than Boris Johnson, who fancies himself a little bit like Jacob Rees-Mogg. They fancy themselves as sophisticated, don't they? And yet, in actual fact, they're just idiots with posh accents. You know, I've seen even recently, even people tearing down Boris Johnson saying, you know, undoubtedly he's a clever man. No, he's not. He's not a clever man. He's not like, we're not talking like IQ 80 or anything, okay? We're not talking about the fact he's way below average intelligence, but he's not a clever man. He cannot even come up with decent lies. And he's too lazy to become clever. Like the brain is like any part of your body. It only becomes strong if you exercise it. If you don't exercise it, it becomes weak. Like anything. Johnson was too cowardly to turn up to pre-election interviews back in 2019. He's never been a winner. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And what did he do when Channel 4 replaced him with an ice sculpture? He went mental. Nadine Dorries went mental as well. Oh, she was raging. That's why she wanted to privatize Channel 4 when she became the culture secretary. I mean, that's a crime against the nation itself, making Nadine Dorries culture secretary. And she was absolutely furious with them. Why? Because they had mildly ridiculed him for not turning up to a debate. This is not the action of winners. This is the actions of the thinnest skinned cowards. In April, Dominic Raab called a convicted criminal spineless for not attending his sentencing should be applied to Johnson now. Yes. He should have, you know, he should have stood up. But this idea, believe me, I shall return to frontline politics. Like, no, he won't. And it's not just that he won't because he can't, he hasn't got the backbone to put himself into a difficult position. He wants everything handed onto a plate. It's not going to be handed on a plate. Consider where the Conservatives are going to be after the election. So first of all, Boris Johnson's not an MP. He's now formally resigned. He's no longer an MP right now. So in order to become their leader, he has to become an MP again. Now, I talked about him chicken running to Henley. Rishi Sunak's allies are suggesting that Sunak will block him. Now, I wasn't sure whether he would or he wouldn't. I think he should. But given what he said yesterday about Johnson, I'm thinking he's prepared to do it. I think I actually would believe that Rishi Sunak is prepared to say Johnson is not allowed to stand as a Tory MP. I don't think he's going to eject him from the party, although Johnson may do that himself if he accepts Nigel Farage's offer to work with him. But I don't think he will, by the way. But it'd be worth talking about. Why is it Rees-Mogg's relationship with OD a Conservative Party issue? If a Labour MP had such a seeding investors in a firm, they found it would be headlines. Well, that's exactly the reason, isn't it? It's because he's not a Labour MP, he's a Conservative MP. And the media will cover for them. As long as the only time the Tory client media will turn on a Tory is if they're not doing what the media want them to do. As long as they're doing what the media want them to do, they'll cover for you every single time. You know, but the other thing is Boris Johnson, again, is trying to present a narrative and he's making all the same mistakes as he did in Partygate because he doesn't learn anything. He's not a clever man. Like, think about what happened with Partygate. There weren't any parties. There were no parties. I can categorically assure you of that. All the guidance was followed, right? Then he changed it to, I have been assured that there were no parties. So he's changed already. Then it was, oh, there were some parties, but I didn't know about them. You know, and I'm deeply disappointed in the people who assured me there were no parties when it turns out there were. So he throws people under the bus. Then he says, oh, yeah, so it seems there were more parties than I initially alluded to. And it turns out that I was at some of these parties, but I didn't think they were parties. And then he eventually had to come to the conclusion, okay, yes, so there were parties. I did know about them. I was at some of them. I should have known there were parties because bloody hell, there was booze and stuff. But I didn't think they were at the time, but I now realize that they were, right? Absolute nonsense. And yet, look what he's doing now with the peer. And again, he's arguing about peerages. That's what the row is about at the moment, peerages. Making people unelected bureaucrats, right? Pippa Creer, she's held on to. I've noticed 2 changes in Boris Johnson's story of the last four days. She's noticed 3, right? So his first position was that Rishi Sunak edited the list from the House of Lords Appointments Committee. Then he changed it to the Prime Minister edited it after it went to the committee. Then he changed it to saying, it wasn't Rishi Sunak who edited it, but James Forsyth, who's a good friend of Rishi Sunak and now working in his department. And now Boris Johnson's changed it to, oh, no, we're not saying anyone changed the list. We're just saying that we asked them to re-vet Nadine Dorries, Nigel Adams and the others. Oh, Lawrence, thank you very much for the super chat, $4.99. The Tories are getting more Oswald Mosley-esque every day. Some of them certainly are. I think there's a lot of them that are just staying quiet when they should not be doing. Because what they're not learning of from that period of history is that appeasement does not work. Absolutely does not work. Oh, Lazarus saying how much he appreciates my content. Thank you very much. She said she wanted to privatize Channel 4 because of all the public money spent on it. Yeah, and then she was schooled, wasn't she, by having it explained to her that no public money is spent on Channel 4. She's recently been whining again. She's like, Channel 4 have apparently announced some sort of cutback in something because of funding issues. And she goes, oh, look, I told you. It's like, what did you tell us? You told us that Channel 4 was getting public money. It's not. That's what you told us. Talk about the parties, but didn't he survive that no confidence vote? It was the later vote that got rid of him. There wasn't ever a vote that got rid of him. You are right that there was a vote of no confidence in Boris Johnson, which he won. But do bear in mind, if a political leader faces a vote of no confidence, winning it isn't really getting over 50%. You need to win it big. You really need 80 to 90% before you can say you've won it. Because the problem is Boris Johnson got about, I've forgotten now. Was it between about 60% or 2/3, something like that? It was a comfortable win, as in comfortably over 50%. But it still exposed the fact that a good third of his party had no confidence in him. And when you add that on to all the opposition MPs who clearly have no confidence in him, that would actually... Basically, if your confidence vote suggests that a majority of MPs don't have confidence in you, your authority is fatally weakened. And ultimately, like, although the reason why Tory MPs said that's enough now was Chris Pincher. Oh, Robert Laris, thank you very much, £10 super chat. Although the Chris Pincher scandal is what was the straw that broke the camel's back, the Chris Pincher scandal was just another scandal. It was no more serious than any number of other scandals, even though it was one that hurt Tory MPs personally, rather than the public. But nonetheless, it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Partygate is what really... Actually, what started the rot was the Owen Paterson scandal. Because you'll notice Partygate was reported a long time, a good year and a half after it actually happened, or started to happen. It happened over a long period of time. But it was about a year and a half after Partygate started, as in the party started, that it was reported. Why? Someone was sitting on it until Boris Johnson was vulnerable. What made him vulnerable? The Owen Paterson scandal. All of a sudden, boom, he lost public confidence. Partygate destroyed his public reputation. So by the time they were ousting him over the Chris Pincher thing, it was just an excuse. It was just, we've had enough. What they'd had enough of the fact that he doesn't learn lessons. Boris Johnson doesn't learn lessons. He doesn't go, oh, I cocked that up, I'd better not cock it up again in future. He just does the same thing. He's doing it again now with these lies. Partygate, he kept changing his story. He didn't, and I said at the time, as soon as Partygate broke, I remember doing a video saying, I will bet you what's happening here is Boris Johnson has sat down, instead of sitting down with his advisor and going, what is going to come out and what do we say to make sure we can deal with this long term? He sat down and came up with a lie that covered what had just been revealed by the media without even thinking, oh, what if something else? Because what happened then is he made his lie and then the media published something else that called out the lie. So then he just changed the story again, changed it again, changed it again, changed it again. And that's all, you know, and he's doing it again now. He's learned nothing. And this is what I keep going back to. You cannot say he's a clever man when he learns no lessons. You know, his PR is absolutely abominable. He got away with it. Like people like Isaac Levidow advised him how to present himself in a way that would appeal to the public. You know, the messed up hair, you know, the weird way he has his shirts tied. You know, all of it is just designed to like appeal to a certain section of the public. But he never did any work himself other than learning to play the role. But anyway, catch up with some more comments here. Welcome to the revolution. I'm ashamed to admit I'm going to miss Mad Nads. I can't think of a more entertaining, memeable MP. She should not have been anywhere near government, though. There's a great many of them. It's actually quite hard to imagine. There are a small number, to be fair, there are a small number of cabinet ministers who are at least decent enough that you could, whether they're competent enough is another matter, because it's hard to tell. But there are some who at least you can imagine would be considered perfectly suitable in a better government. But it's a small number, and you probably don't know their names. What do I expect to happen next in terms of the Tory civil war? See, well, this is all very interesting because Rishi Sunak has got his MPs behind him. His MP, there's a few chuntering, but mostly they're behind him now. Whether it's out because they think Sunak's doing the right thing or just out of self-preservation, or fear of a Labour government. Like even Jacob Rees-Mogg is backing him. And we know Jacob Rees-Mogg is no fan of Rishi Sunak, no supporter of Rishi Sunak, and he's a big supporter of Boris Johnson. But for his own purposes, Rees-Mogg is supporting Sunak. Absolutely. So the majority in the parliamentary party is supporting him. The membership, the media are much more divided. The Tory client media are much more divided. Many of those are on Johnson's side. He's got friends in the media, definitely. Again, one of the failings of Rishi Sunak is he did not cultivate links with the media. You know, there's like Forsyth, who's his pal, but he hasn't really cultivated links with the media like Johnson. I mean, obviously Johnson worked for the media for many years. That's a bit of a failing because the Tories rely upon it. The membership is crucial because they can cause trouble. I strongly suspect they won't. Tory party members tend not to be the rebellious sort. So it's part of the character of being a Tory, really, isn't it? You tend not to be that rebellious. So Sunak is probably fine. You know, Johnson is going to rage in the media. I think the big test will be the party conference, what sort of reception Sunak gets. But really, given that he's got MPs on his side, he's probably put Boris Johnson in his box. You know, is not giving Johnson anything. He's screwed him over these things. We'll have to see what happens with the by-elections. But it looks to me like MPs are going, whatever happens, we only make things worse if we try and destabilize the leadership. So I actually think the civil war is going to be raging in the press, perhaps, which is only going to be self-defeating for them. But, you know, they're very welcome to do it. You know, we did this in Labour. Why shouldn't they do it? But there we go. Johnson was a wolf dressed as a sheep. So glad to see the back of him in his lot now. Yeah, I think we have seen the back of him. I mean, we're not going to see him in prison unless something really transpires. There was a comment, actually, I just missed. About the COVID inquiry, which will not report until 2026. That's fine from my point of view, because apart from anything else, because it's a public inquiry, things will still come out. So we don't have to wait till 2026 to find things out. But the other thing is that will also mean that most of the inquiry will take place with a Labour government. And you know what? A Labour government is not going to be any barrier to them asking for records. So whatever government records the government do not destroy, the inquiry will have access to. So I'm fine with that. I'd have been more worried if the inquiry was going to be done and dusted by the election. Boris Johnson can't understand complex issues, no attention to detail. No, Boris Johnson's only discernible talent is to be able to read books in Latin, on ancient Greek, and to be able to bumble. You know, whenever he's asked a question, oh, well, you know, and then he'll come out with some, you know, like when he was tackled about getting a journalist beaten up. Oh, it was a long and lamentable affair. It's like you're just coming up with long words so that his brain can think of something to say. You know, he's not a clever man. There is no way of really describing him as clever. Because what? Because he went to university. He went to university to do a course that has no exams. The course he did at the time had no exams. You passed it by your tutors just going, oh, you're probably worth a 2-1, or you're probably worth a first. That was all it was. He read books. He learned books by rote. That's all he did. The old style of learning, just learning passages by heart, as if that imparts no wisdom. It's knowledge without wisdom. But anyway, by 2026, most of these charlatans will be long gone from politics. Yes, but the Conservative Party will still be there in opposition. And some of the people, I'll tell you what, I don't know who's going to end up leading the Conservative Party, but I strongly suspect it's someone who will have been part of Johnson's cabinet when the COVID pandemic really hit. Whether it be Suella Braverman, okay, if it's Kemi Badenoch, maybe not, but I'm not sure Kemi Badenoch will win this time. She may be one for the future. I think it's going to be difficult for someone who's been attacked by the Brexit crowd to win the next one, because they're going to be a bit more entrenched. The red wall Tories will be gone, of course. They'll be gone. A great deal of the blue wall Tories will be gone. But the ones, you've got to bear in mind that the most insane Tory MPs are in the safest seats, because they can't win a marginal seat. Someone like Nadine Dorries and Suella Braverman couldn't win, or Priti Patel. They can't win marginal seats. They're too insane. They can only win safe seats. So by reducing the Conservatives to their safe seats, you basically increase the level of lunacy, or the concentration of lunacy within the party. So the next leader is very unlikely to be anyone who's vaguely sane. And it is very likely to be someone who is thoroughly implicated in the way we handle COVID as well. It just won't be Boris Johnson, Matt Hancock, or in all likelihood, Rishi Sunak. In theory, Rishi Sunak, if he wanted to stay on, could. I know in my lifetime, no Tory leader has ever been allowed to stay on after losing an election. I don't think any Tory leaders even attempted to stay on after losing an election. I think the last one was Ted Heath, but that was before I was born. So, yeah, I think, but it is possible that enough of the parliamentary party will go, look, we don't fancy Suella Braverman, we don't fancy Kemi Badenoch, we don't fancy Penny Mordaunt, We don't even fancy Stephen Barclay because people are talking up his chances. Gillian Keegan, the education secretary, if you even know who she is, she's now making a pitch. She's saying she's the heir of Thatcher. I am Thatcher reborn. Right, okay. But if they don't like any of those, or they don't fancy their chances, then they might persuade Sunak. Because if they persuade Sunak to stay on, the party members have got nothing to say about it, have they? I'm glad that seat, I assume you mean Mid Bedfordshire, has a good chance of flipping to the Libs. Couldn't vote for Starmer. Okay. I mean, all I would say is wait for a few years when it's been in power, and I think you may want to revisit that. Carol Vorderman said she wants the Tories to lose so badly they can't form the official opposition. I wonder would that be a good or a bad thing for Labour? It would be a very good thing, because the Conservatives are the only party who can actually challenge Labour in an election. Really that simple. So it would be immensely good if they were not even the opposition. Because apart from anything else, for that to happen, because bear in mind, it's not going to happen. It's not actually going to happen. But for it to happen, the SNP would have to, against the odds at the moment, pretty much retain the seats they've got in Scotland, or the Lib Dems would have to really devour the southeast of England. And the Tories would have to be beaten back into double-digit figures, at the very least, probably very low double-digit figures. So there'd be nothing left of their party. There'd be nothing to rebuild. It would take them years if they ever could. Can't remember. Oh, this was the last one then. Can't remember whose quote this was, but he called Oxford University the home for lost causes. There was a bit of a slightly funny story. So I went, this is about Cambridge really though, although I wouldn't say anything bad about Oxford or Cambridge. Obviously it's produced a great deal of genuine intellects as well. But so I went to university at Manchester, to the School of Physics and Astronomy, you know, Jodrell Bank and all that. So that's got a fairly proud history. And it was where Ernest Rutherford split the atom, for example. And the sort of amusing thing, you know, it's a bit like where if you're a footballer or if you're a fan of a football team and your star player goes somewhere else and then they fail hard and you go, should have stayed with us, shouldn't you? There's a bit of a story like that with Rutherford and Manchester, because he split the atom at Manchester, right? So that was his big work. And then he went to Cambridge. Cambridge poached him. And about the most exciting thing he did at Cambridge was fall out of a tree and die of a hernia. But there we go. But we'll call it there anyway, on that sort of sadistic note, or spiteful note, maybe. Very in keeping with discussing Boris Johnson. Thanks very much for coming on. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel, and check the description below for details about Patreon if you are interested. Have a very good day. Make sure you get plenty of fluids because it's very warm. And until next time, I'll see you later.